Seattle, 1974. It's the kind of summer day people remember for years afterward. The sun high, the water calm, the smell of sunscreen and barbecue smoke drifting across the grass. Lake Sammamish State Park is packed. Families on picnic blankets. Kids chasing each other along the shoreline. A frisbee cutting lazy arcs through the air, and somewhere in that crowd, a young man is moving between groups of women, his left arm resting in a white sling. He's polite, almost shy about it. He says he can't lift his sailboat off the roof of his car alone. Would they mind helping, just for a minute? Most say no, or laugh it off. A couple of women agree, walk with him partway, notice there's no sailboat at all, and quietly back away. But two don't back away in time. Their names were Janice Ott and Denise Naslund. Neither of them made it home that night. The man's name, the one he gave them, cheerfully, like it was nothing, was Ted. Before he was a headline, before any of this, he was just a kid. Theodore Robert Bundy was born in November 1946 in Burlington, Vermont, to a young unmarried woman named Louise Cowell. In an era when having a child out of wedlock could ruin a family's reputation, Louise's parents did something to protect the family name. They raised Ted as their own son and let their daughter pose as his older sister. For years, Ted didn't know the truth. He grew up believing his grandparents were his mother and father. When he finally learned, as a teenager, that the woman he called his sister was actually his mother, and that his real father was a man nobody could ever quite identify, something in him seemed to shift. Neighbors and old classmates would later describe him in strange, almost contradictory terms. Quiet, awkward around girls, but also ambitious, hungry for a kind of status and wealth he hadn't been born into. Students walking, 1970s aesthetic if available, or modern campus as generic substitute, he moved with his mother to Tacoma, Washington. He went on to study psychology at the University of Washington. And here's the detail that still unsettles investigators to this day. He was good at it. He understood people. He knew, better than most, what made them trust a stranger. He volunteered at a crisis hotline center, where he reportedly talked suicidal callers back from the edge with real practiced compassion. One of his co-workers, there was a young true crime writer named Anne Rule. She would later say he was one of the kindest men she'd ever worked beside. Nobody around him had any reason to be afraid. That was about to change. Starting in January 1974, young women across Washington state began vanishing, one after another, almost all of them college students, smart, independent, in the middle of ordinary days. The first was Karen Sparks, a University of Washington student, beaten so severely in her own bed that she survived only by chance, left with permanent brain damage. Weeks later, Linda Ann Healy disappeared from her own bedroom. Her bed left strangely, carefully made, a small trace of blood on the pillow, the only sign that anything was wrong. Then came Donna Manson, who never returned from a short walk to a jazz concert on her own campus. Then Susan Rancourt, vanishing after an evening advising session. Then Roberta Kathleen Parks. Then Brenda Ball. Then Georgian Hawkins. This last one, taken from an alley between her sorority house and her dorm, a walk of less than 100 yards, in a stretch of time so short her sorority sisters swore later that they'd seen her only minutes before. There was no forced entry anywhere, no broken locks, no neighbors who heard screaming, just gone. Investigators were stumped. These women had almost nothing in common except one small, strange detail that kept surfacing again and again in the accounts of people who'd seen them last. A young man, sometimes with his arm in a sling, sometimes on crutches, always asking for help. He'd ask someone to carry a stack of books to his car, or help him lift something heavy. And the moment they were close enough, out of sight of the crowd, out of earshot of anyone who might hear, he'd strike. After Lake Sammamish, for the first time, police had something solid to work with. Several witnesses who'd actually spoken to the man who remembered his name and the make of his car. A tan Volkswagen Beetle. Composite sketches went out to newspapers across the state. Tip lines lit up with hundreds of names. Somewhere in that flood of tips was a name submitted, with real reluctance, by Anne Rule, the writer who had worked beside him at the crisis hotline. She didn't want to believe it. She'd found him gentle, genuinely caring, even. She submitted the tip anyway. That name was Ted Bundy. But a name on a tip line isn't evidence. There was nothing yet that could hold up. No body, no fingerprint, nothing linking him directly to a single victim. And then Bundy left Washington behind entirely, moving to Salt Lake City, Utah, to begin law school. The murders followed him there. In November 1974, a young woman named Carol Daranch was approached inside a Utah shopping mall by a man in a sport coat who identified himself as a police officer. He told her someone had tried to break into her car in the parking lot and asked her to come with him to identify a suspect. She went, in the car. Instead of driving toward a police station, he pulled over and tried to snap a handcuff onto her wrist. She fought. She clawed at his face. She threw open the door and threw herself out onto the street, running until she found help. She survived. And more importantly, she remembered his face. That same night, only a short distance away, a young woman named Deborah Kent walked out of her high school's theater production to pick up her younger brother. She never made it to the car. Carol Daranch's escape became the single most important break in the entire case. For the first time, investigators had a living witness who could sit in a room and look Ted Bundy directly in the eye. In August 1975, a Utah police officer pulled Bundy over late at night after noticing his Volkswagen circling a quiet neighborhood. Inside the car, a crowbar, an ice pick, a ski mask, rope, and a pair of handcuffs. It wasn't enough to charge him with murder, but it was enough to arrest him, and enough, finally, for investigators across Washington, Utah, and Colorado to start comparing notes on the same name. Carol Daranch was brought in for a police lineup. She identified him instantly. Bundy was convicted of kidnapping and sent to a Utah prison, then extradited to Colorado to stand trial for the murder of a nursing student named Karen Campbell, and then, in June 1977, during a break in his own pretrial hearing, with guards distracted, Bundy simply climbed out of a second-story courthouse library window and walked away. He was caught within days, hiding in the mountains outside Aspen. But he wasn't done. 6 months later, he tried again, this time from inside his own jail cell. Over weeks, sneaking food from his meals to lose enough weight, he made himself thin enough to slip through a gap in the ceiling above his cell, walking calmly out through the jailer's own office while the building slept. By the time anyone realized he was gone, Ted Bundy had already boarded a bus, heading south. He was going to Florida. In the early hours of January 15, 1978, Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. In a matter of minutes, moving from room to room in the dark, he attacked 4 young women. 2 of them, Lisa Levy and Margaret Bowman, did not survive the night. Weeks later, he abducted a 12-year-old girl, Kimberly Leach, from outside her middle school in Lake City. Her body was found in a state park a month afterward. It was, in a strange way, the beginning of the end. The careful, calculating man from Washington was gone. What remained was reckless, sloppy, running out of both money and time. On February 15, 1978, a Pensacola police officer noticed a stolen Volkswagen driving with its headlights off, well past 1 a.m. He pulled it over. The driver gave a false name. He fought to get away. It was Ted Bundy. This time, there would be no escape. His 1979 trial for the Chi Omega murders became the first criminal trial in American history to be televised nationally. Bundy, ever the performer, chose to represent himself for parts of it, calm, well-spoken, almost enjoying the spotlight. The jury wasn't fooled. He was convicted and sentenced to death. A second trial for the murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach ended exactly the same way. He spent nearly a decade on death row, filing appeal after appeal, offering fragments of confession in exchange for delay after delay. In his final days, with no legal options left, he finally admitted to what investigators had suspected for years, confessing to roughly 30 murders across 7 states. Many who studied his case believed the real number was far higher. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in Florida. It's easy, telling a story like this, to make the killer the main character, his charm, his escapes. The camera's in his courtroom, but the real story has always belonged to the women who never got the chance to grow older. Linda, Donna, Susan, Roberta, Brenda, Georgian, Janice, Denise, Melissa, Laura, Deborah, Karen, Lisa, Margaret, Kimberly, and Carol, who fought back and lived so that the rest of the story could be told at all.